Greetings, friends. I'm Vitaly Portnikov. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the People's Republic of China has described Washington's declarations as unilateral intimidation, particularly the statements indicating that United States President Donald Trump would be prepared to implement a 500% tariff on Chinese products should the People's Republic of China persist in its procurement of Russian oil. This was explicitly stated by U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, who indicated that Donald Trump is actively considering such a measure and is very likely to implement it. In response, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of China issued a threat promising harsh measures, which China might undertake should such prohibitive tariffs indeed become effective and be fully implemented. Nevertheless, even the 100% tariff on Chinese products, which is slated to be implemented in early November, will be sufficient to create significant difficulties within the Chinese economy and its trade relationships with the United States and other nations. Countries. Yet, up until now, Donald Trump has consistently promised to implement such severe prohibitive tariffs with the expectation that this would significantly bolster the United States' negotiating stance during trade talks with the People's Republic of China and consequently compel Beijing to give up its own prohibitive measures and limitations as well. But with Russian oil, things might be different. For the leadership of the People's Republic of China, the purchase of this oil may not only be a matter of economic benefit, but also a matter of political solidarity. Because by continuing to do so, the leadership of the People's Republic of China provides assistance to Russian President Vladimir Putin in his expansionist war against Ukraine, enabling the Russian president to mitigate the effect of Western sanctions on the Russian economy. Beyond any doubt, had it not been for Chinese and Indian purchases of Russian oil, Putin would have been compelled to consider a suspension of military actions a long time ago. Western sanctions would undeniably have exerted a far more calming and clarifying influence on the aggressive Russian president and his inner circle. However, it is currently unclear to what extent the leadership of the People's Republic of China is prepared for a prolonged confrontation with the United States in return for its ongoing backing of Russia. The very same point applies equally to India. During his press conference, President Trump announced that Narendra Modi, the Indian Prime Minister, had given him his word that he would cease all procurements of Russian oil. However, so far, the Indian Prime Minister's promises have not converted into a real refusal. Moreover, after the introduction of tariffs on Indian goods, which Donald Trump justified by stating that India was financing Russia's war against Ukraine, the procurement of Russian oil by Indian enterprises actually saw an increase. Even the sanctions imposed by the European Union and the United Kingdom, which targeted major refineries processing Russian oil into petroleum products, failed to dissuade New Delhi from continuing its purchases of Russian raw materials. But with India, however, it might turn out to be simpler for Donald Trump to reach an agreement than with China, because for India it may primarily be a matter of economic benefit. Indeed, for India, affordable raw materials are of paramount importance above all else. And if Washington manages to find any suitable option that is acceptable to Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, then he might just decline to proceed. To stop purchasing Russian oil, to put it simply, if sufficiently cheap. If American oil, or even oil sourced from the Persian Gulf countries, could enable the production of refined oil products and yield the same premium benefits that Indian refineries are presently deriving from their acquisition of Russian oil and the subsequent manufacturing of oil products from it, then Narendra Modi might also decide to refrain from a significant number of Russian purchases. Purchases so as not to damage the important relationship that New Delhi has with the United States. However, with China, the situation could be quite different, as the Chinese regime's acquisition of Russian oil is a component of the broader trade conflict between Washington and Beijing. This is a war for dominance and influence within the Asia-Pacific region. A war in which the People's Republic of China strives to prove the United States' inability to manage the global order, specifically regarding the continued preservation of established rules, and instead endeavors to further destabilize it, primarily to the advantage of authoritarian regimes. And in this regard, Vladimir Putin's Russian Federation, particularly following the commencement of the large-scale Russian-Ukrainian war, truly stands as the leading proponent of authoritarianism. The defeat of this aggressive nation in the Russo-Ukrainian war would simultaneously be a victory for the civilized world, a triumph of common sense, the ultimate victory of good over evil, and a setback for the geopolitical ambitions of the People's Republic of China. Therefore, the question arises, what economic costs and sacrifices is the chairman of the People's Republic of China, Xi Jinping, prepared to make in order to support Putin's regime and the successful progression of Russia's aggressive ambitions in Europe? And what economic costs and sacrifices is Donald Trump prepared to undertake to halt not only Russian aggression, but also the geopolitical ambitions of China, thereby safeguarding the United States from potential aggressive actions by the People's Republic of China against Taiwan? Ultimately, everything will truly depend on Beijing or Washington's readiness to incur these economic costs. The one who is willing to sacrifice a sufficient amount of capital to diminish the opponent's influence will emerge victorious in this global confrontation, which constantly risks transforming from an economic battle into an actual military standoff, utilizing the latest and most advanced weapons. But for the time being, the struggle continues for Russian oil. And as we can observe, neither Washington nor Beijing is willing to make concessions. Much will depend on whether Donald Trump genuinely opts to implement prohibitive tariffs against the People's Republic of China and whether European nations will align with American sanctions. In this scenario, these European countries should, at the very least, impose sanctions on Chinese and Indian enterprises that are purchasing Russian oil and manufacturing petroleum products, which are continuing to be sold in the markets of the civilized world, thereby helping to sustain the brutal and unjust Putin regime. Thank you, my friends. Stay on this channel, subscribe to my social media, Patreon, Buy Me a Coffee, and Donatello channels. They help these resources grow. Use YouTube's sponsorship feature. Peace to you.